This is a 5-step process. I use it anytime that I'm with another person and I'm feeling defensive. Back in October of 2020, I took notes when I was traversing this energy. And those are the notes that I am pulling out today to help us guide us through the energy in the present moment. So hearing this is actually not very helpful unless you remember what to do when the energy is present. You don't have to remember the 5 steps, just remember the essence of the steps. Number 1 is to stay present. Stay present. And the way to stay present is to go to the sensation in the body. Defensiveness comes with very strong sensations. So the moment you become aware that you're being defensive, that moment, you pause and you go to the sensation in the body as best you're able. So when I wrote this in 2020, I wrote down what I was feeling. I wrote, I'm feeling tingling sensations all over the body, particularly in the chest and the throat and then the back of the neck area. So come to the present moment and feel those sensations as best you're able. This is when you're talking to another person. So there's another being. I've actually been asked this before. How do you apply these tools when you're actually busy communicating with another person? It comes with practice, building capacity little by little, just like anything else. Little by little, you build capacity. So as best you're able, notice the sensations in the body, and that's going to help you, 1, stay present, but 2, create space between you, the expansive being that you are, that is not bound by the limitations of the mind that we've created and accepted about ourselves. That expansive being, that's who you are. The defensiveness is the shield that is keeping some wound hidden. So in being present and feeling the sensations, you're creating space. Now you can see the being, the extended, expansive being can now see you created space between you and that energy. And that is the key towards freedom. The more that you cultivate the practice of seeing things from a different vantage point, I say this all the time, cultivate the practice of seeing things from a different vantage point. This is what I mean. You're creating space. You're no longer identifying and being entangled with the energy, which is what we do over and over and over until we learn to create space. Feel the sensations. You're not that energy, so now you can witness it. So that's what I call step number 1. This is just step number 1. Step number 2. This is where you're going to cultivate the practice of letting go. What are you letting go of? In that moment, whatever the conversation was, let it go. It's no longer relevant. Whatever you had in mind that you thought the moment was about, it's no longer about that. Because what's present is defensiveness. So that whole scenario literally transformed itself so that you can become free. It's the person you're interacting with just literally handed you a gift. It handed you the gift of witnessing your unconscious mind so that you can free yourself from a belief system that is not true about yourself. With whatever you can muster to let go of the agenda that you had, and this is not easy because we have a very challenging time letting go of our agenda. But this is why I'm saying it. You have to learn to let go of your agenda. The moment just became about you learning how to traverse defensiveness. Until when? Until you don't have to learn that anymore. And then it will be a different moment. This is why freedom comes from a different vantage point, because once you're not bound by that energy, then the moment is something else. But in that moment, that's what's required. Have to drop everything else. This just became an opportunity to reach internal freedom. Step number 3 is applying the tool that I explained in the previous video. Now I actually go back to the tool of reflecting the other person. So you can even tell the other person, I'm going to apply a tool right now to help me understand you better. I'm going to reflect what I'm hearing. And you reflect them. You basically repeat what you heard them say. You can watch the other video that I created about reflective listening, and you'll get the details there. So in that moment, you basically repeat what you heard them say as best you're able, while continuing to feel the sensations in the body. And this is where building capacity is going to be key. And only with practice, you will be able to do both. Stay present with the sensation and continue to have a conversation. It's a matter of building capacity. So once you repeat what you heard, pause and ask the person, did I understand you correctly? Because you became defensive because you heard something that didn't quite agree. It wasn't agreeable with a thought system within you, right? So this is where learning to see things differently comes in as well, because now you are beyond the shield that you've created. You are willing to hear someone else's vantage point. So you reflect what you heard and you ask, did I hear you correctly? And the other person is going to either say, yes, you heard me correctly, or will clarify. Sometimes in just their clarification, you will notice that you were thinking they were saying XYZ and they were really saying ABC. So sometimes a lot of the conflict in communication comes from us not really understanding what the other person was saying because we saw it through our filter. So you reflect and you wait until the other person feels that they have been heard. That's step number 3. If you manage to do the first 3 steps, you're pretty good. So if you got to the first 3 steps, the next 2 are just FYI. Step number 4 is to continue feeling the sensations in your body. And step number 5 is more a side note than a step. Just from my own experience and from the experience that I've heard other people recount as well, it is very possible that the only benefit that you're going to get from this process is that you get to free yourself, which is pretty good on its own. Step number 5 is more like a warning, a side note to let you know that it's highly unlikely that you're going to feel appreciation for all that work, that you're going to feel that the other person will reflect you back and the other person will have willingness to hear your point. Very unlikely that that will happen. And I am letting you know now so that you release that expectation. It's very normal unless the other person is also trained in reflective listening and it's also interested in creating intimacy without all of the other potential barriers to communication. Unless that person is very grounded and can tell there is something here is off and I now want to understand you, honestly, don't expect them to reflect you. And it's nothing that they're doing wrong. It's simply they're not there yet. What comes to mind is when I used to dance, sometimes I would say this to my team members and they would tell me this as well. They would give me feedback or I would give them feedback on something that they weren't working on. And it wouldn't do anything until they asked the question, why isn't this working? And it's like, it's because of this feedback that I've been saying for 5 years, right? I'm exaggerating. But the reason I say it is because if people are not working on communication, don't expect them to reflect you because it's just not a priority for them in this moment. Doesn't mean that they're never going to do it. It just means in that moment. So that's how you let go of defensiveness. And this is a matter of practice. So I would say take a deep breath. Anytime that shows up in your life, just breathe. Drop what you thought was happening. Accept that now you have an opportunity to let go of this feeling. Trust that what you are in truth, it's not bound by any false beliefs that you may be holding about yourself. Trust that you have the capacity. You can build capacity to witness what is happening in the present moment and watch your life transform. So if you're interested in having someone handhold you through this entire process, I'm going to be starting the 2024 Intentional Evolution Intensive early in January. So sign up to my mailing list to receive information about that. Thank you so much for your willingness to work on yourself, for your willingness to do things differently and to free yourself. When you free yourself, you're no longer holding other people hostage for triggering you. And you just have the opportunity to have an experience that just wasn't available before. And you will see that through your own healing process. You're going to see how life becomes easier and more easygoing and more peaceful because you're more peaceful inside. Internal peace is what engenders external peace. So continue doing this work. Thank you for joining. And until next time, be blessed.